Let's get this show on the road. I'm going to start completely differently today with a statement that I normally throw about the dinner table, and that is, don't believe a word I say. I want you to take this in, absorb it, think about it, and go away and reach your own conclusions. I'm going to present you with a bunch of facts and some interesting discoveries and some theories and conclusions, but these are my theories and conclusions based on some scientific evaluations. That doesn't mean that everybody will agree, and I hope that you'll take something away from this that'll make you think at least. So, to start off with, the history of our planet is not as it seems. This is a very important and crucial little bit of information that we need to sink into our subconscious. Because when we come out of school, and for those that are privileged enough to go to university, it's often associated with ego. And you think that I'm a well-educated guy, no one's going to lie to me or pull the wool over my eyes. Well, surprise, surprise. The higher your education, the more liable or the more probable you are for having the wool pulled over your eyes. And I am one of those perfect examples. It's taken me a lifetime to figure this out, and hopefully we can shortcut this process for a lot of people. Things are not as they seem. There's been a lot of stuff happening on this planet that makes no sense. And when you start delving and researching origins of humankind and asking those questions, who are we, where do we come from, and why are we here? I bet you that every one of you has asked those questions before. And not just you here, but millions of people around the world. Not just once, but many times. So when you start going back and researching human history and looking at the anomalies that don't make any sense, you realize very quickly that you can't just stick to history or archaeology or whatever it is, or geology. You've got to actually open your mind and learn and research everything that crosses your desk. Because if you don't, you will miss pieces of the puzzle. And a lot of the very important pieces of the puzzle come from indigenous knowledge, ancient indigenous knowledge that in the Western society especially is ignored and buried and forgotten. And that is a great shame. So if history is written by the victors, how much do we really know about our human history? This is a fascinating subject because we get thrown these kind of idioms every day, and we just swallow them and regurgitate them. Oh, history is written by the victors. Oh, of course, of course. But what does it actually mean? Well, it actually means a great deal. You've got to analyze these little statements and think about them. Because if you speak to statisticians, they'll tell you that if you take that statement at face value, it means that you lose at least 50% of information during any major conflict situation, right? Okay, that presents a huge problem for those that write our history books and for the stuff that we read in history books and we trust and value as being accurate and true. Well, I'm going to show you that what we know about human history is so far removed from what happened that we actually cannot trust and believe anything, and we have to evaluate and reevaluate everything all the time. We know less about our human origins than is permissible by the laws of physics. So that's a thing I'd like you to put in the back of your mind and remember, because it's an important thing. So next time somebody starts to tell you about what Napoleon did here or what happened there and what the Olmecs and the Toltecs did and so forth, just say, okay, we know less than is allowable by the laws of physics about our human history, so let's think carefully about what we read in history books. And this is what the electromagnetic universe gets presented to us, with very long waves on the left, and then the waves get higher and higher, and the frequencies get higher and higher until you get on this side. This is a continuum. It doesn't stop. It's infinite that way, and it's infinite this way. Anything you can imagine vibrates at its own specific frequency. And once you know at which frequency it vibrates, you can affect it either positively or negatively, understanding the vibrational fields. The interesting thing is that out of this entire electromagnetic spectrum, we can only see with our eyes this sliver of light, which we call visible light over there. That's it. Everything else to the left and to the right of that, as far as we're concerned, is invisible. And I love this because the macho guys always come out and say, well, if I can't see it and I can't touch it, show me physical proof. I want physical evidence. Then I'll believe it. Well, unfortunately, there is not always physical evidence for the stuff of the universe. And we have to look at other areas for evidence. Where does this take us with ancient civilizations? How did they respond to all the stuff on the left and the stuff on the right? And we realized that they had a very, very keen understanding of this. And they called it the third eye, the pineal gland, which they had a very keen understanding. And you'll see the third eye notion echoing through all ancient cultures, or pretty much all ancient cultures. And somehow they knew a lot more about this psychic ability, or the ESP, of being able to feel and read and understand the other frequencies that are not necessarily visible with our eyes, not the visible light, but all the other stuff. And that's pretty much what the pineal gland is. There's been huge amounts of study done on that. I suggest you go away and have a look at that. It is really amazing once you discover how important the pineal gland is in our anatomy and how that has been manipulated to control us. It becomes quite spectacular. So basically what the pineal gland is a frequency receptor. Right? Just like our eyes are frequency receptors, they pick up the frequency of the visible light and convert it into something that our brains understand. The same thing with the pineal gland, except it's embedded in the middle of your head. You don't need a lens. It just picks up all the other frequencies and converts them into, understandable information. What does this all have to do with ancient civilizations and stone ruins in southern Africa? Everything. You'll see that these ancient civilizations understood frequency, and they understood energy and how to convert frequency into energy. And that is actually amazing. Even the simple formula that Max Planck uses, that frequency equals energy, starts to come home, and it becomes interesting how ancient civilizations and modern physics overlap very, very comfortably. Sound and frequency are the common denominators of pretty much all religions and all creations. And very quickly realize that in the beginning, there was the Word. The Bible tells us that God said, "Let there be light." The Word of God. It is the sound of God that created the universe and all things in it. And in Hinduism and in Eastern philosophy, it's the primordial sound, the Om or the Aum, that created all things. And very quickly, do you not only realize that sound seems to be the primordial source of all things in the universe, but very quickly you reconcile Eastern and Western philosophy that gave birth to all these religions, and also understand and lay the foundations for this thing called laws of nature, sometimes referred to as sacred geometry. And boy, when you say sacred geometry, some people go running for the hills because it's got the word sacred in it, right? And it's some wishy-washy religious thing. No, we can't get involved in that. We don't understand sacred. I don't know what that means. Well, sacred actually is a Greek word that means fixed. So we're dealing not with some wishy-washy religious principle, but we're dealing with fixed geometry. Common folk out, in the world think that science has got it all figured out. It's not true. Science has got nothing figured out. If you speak to any scientist worth their salt, they'll tell you right off the bat, 90 to 95% of science is unexplained. We don't understand it. We observe it, but we don't understand it. And just because we can observe it doesn't mean we know what the hell is going on. So next time somebody tells you, oh, they got it all figured out, they don't. And I've got it, from some very senior scientists in South Africa specifically that told me exactly what they observe in their laboratory. And that the other thing that shocked me is that when this was a professor at the University of Port Elizabeth that told me that 90% or more of the stuff they observe in their lab, they don't understand. And I said, well, can I come and sit in your lab and make notes of the stuff you don't understand? And he said, no, we can't. We're not allowed to note it or report on it until we understand it. That's a big pity. The ancients were primitive. This is how ancient civilizations are shown to us. And this is what we believe they did. I better speed up here by the looks of things. And it's these ancient primitive guys that did stuff like this, right? Because they were bored. And then we get told, if you watch History Channel, apparently they built this because they needed to know where the sun came up. That's what they tell us on History Channel. I can think of many ways, much easier ways to figure out, stick a few sticks in the ground and figure out where the sun comes up. And then when they were bored with building circles like this, they built big statues like this. And apparently also, this one tells us where east is, so it was probably obviously built to face east, so we know where east was just in case they forgot. And when they were tired of building statues, they built stuff like this, platforms, giant platforms out of big stone. We don't know why they needed platforms in those days, but they built them in any case, just in case they had to find a use for a platform at some stage. Let's build a platform, come on, we've got nothing better to do. Cruising around the veld, avoiding snakes. Hey, let's build a platform. That's what our history books tend to suggest. And then they got into stuff like this. And this is really when you watch the poor guys on Discovery Channel trying to imitate how they built this, you just realize how pathetic it is. We don't know how they did this. We got no bloody idea until you start embracing the thought or the concept of frequency manipulation and sound manipulation. Suddenly, this all becomes an absolute reality. And you realize we're dealing with something very special and very unique. And then they obviously built stuff like this. Well, Carmen Bolter, as I mentioned earlier, her wonderful documentary, Pyramid Code, she shows in there that the pyramids were nothing else but the generation of energy. And she shows you beautifully that these were giant energy devices. And if you think that after years and years of abuse, of being gutted and destroyed, they have lost their energy fields, you'd be mistaken. Here's an amazing photograph taken with a special lens that shows you that there's still some weird electromagnetic fields that come out of there. Incidentally, we will be doing this kind of photography with special lenses at Adam's Calendar and some of the many stone circles in Watervalboven very shortly. So something strange is still going on, and I'll be talking more in great detail about these energies and frequencies tomorrow. Mythology. The word mythology is completely misused and misunderstood in today's society. The original word mythos comes from Greek once again, and it did not mean imaginary, fairy tale, or anything of that nature. It actually meant words, written words, stories and legends, historic events that were sworn to be accurate and true by priests and kings. So it was an affidavit of an accurate account in history. So it actually means completely the opposite to the value that we ascribe to it today. So from now on, every time you read the word mythology, you've got to ascribe the correct value to it and just replace it with the word history, not imaginary. And suddenly our entire human history changes dramatically. The most ancient written record in human history, as we know, the first civilization, the Sumerians, they wrote and wrote and wrote like they were besieged by the devil. They wrote down everything they could. And when you read the thousands and thousands of pages on Oxford University website, they treat every translation, and this is my take on it, go and do your own research. They treat all the translations of the Sumerian tablets as a work of fiction. I'm not kidding you. Just put that into perspective, people. The first people on earth that found the art of writing, the first thing they do is they sit down and they write millions of clay tablets full of crap. How is that possible? Do me a favor. I did a lot of work on literacy, teaching children how to read, and I can see at least one person in this auditorium that worked on that project with me. I know what it's like when a grade 1 child can hardly read and they get words wrong and they get the meanings of words wrong. When I read those translations on Oxford University website, I can see exactly how they're getting things wrong. It's like watching grade 1s that have just learned how to read, trying to explain big words that they don't understand, get the meanings wrong. It's quite spectacular. Just go and look at that for yourselves. All the greatest stories in the Bible originally come from the Sumerian tablets. Every single one.